Hey there, it's Jennifer. And by the way, I've started dancing to that music at the beginning of the of the 21 days. The yes, lovely conversation with you. Thank you. I've had so much feedback from clients who I'm doing one-on-ones with to people on some of the social media platforms. Just those of you that are going back and listening to the replay, thank you. You're adorable. Thank you for your comments. I try to go back every day and reply. Just really touched. And I'm glad that it's making a difference. I had a wonderful conversation with one of my clients today about the difference that it's making for her. And I'm giving you a little shout out, Johanna. So, guys, you know what we do by now. If this is your first day with us, then I'm going to let you know that we are streaming on LinkedIn and facebook.com/wide awakening. And we're also streaming on Instagram and YouTube, and all of the recordings are on YouTube. I highly recommend day 5 about carrying, and I highly recommend just look up the Wide Awakening on YouTube. I highly recommend that you go back to day 1 to get the framework for why we're doing this in the first place, which is because there are just a lot of people out of sorts right now, anxious, not knowing what to do with themselves, knowing that literally it's not just the cards for the United States that are in the air, it's the cards for the whole world because there's a certain relationship. This is going to be a fascinating set of years ahead of us. And if you're someone who likes to stay in control, or if you're someone who likes to be able to predict outcomes, yeah, that is why we're doing what we're doing today. It's all about presence. What does it mean? Now we've done some preambles to this conversation, but we're actually talking about your presence from a different angle. In the next 2 days, we'll have some amazing experts. One who is a brain scientist. Oh my gosh, she's a freaking brilliant. And then another who is a trauma expert that's working with everybody in Asheville who's just the bomb.com. He's just something else. So, yeah, he's amazing. So, we're getting you all set up, yeah? So that you can actually have your legs underneath you. Ultimately, the wide awakening is yes about having your legs underneath you, but it's actually about changing the entire paradigm for which you run life. I want to share a little bit about uh, a journey to presence. So most of the rest of my life, see if you can relate, by the way, and make sure you put in your word for the day and where you're calling in. Just put it in the comments. I'd love to hear also where you feel or when in the day or what are you doing when you feel yourself fully in the present, not pulled by the past or afraid of the past happening in the future. What are you doing? What do you do every day that causes you to feel fully in your presence? So that's where we'll begin. If you can share that, that's a great place to kind of activate where we're going today. So, gardening, amen, sister. I'm right with you. That's exactly what I was doing before I came here. So I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. All right, let me tell you a little story. In past relationships, uh, past romantic relationships, I had I remember always breaking up the relationship, and it was constantly trying to be enough for my partner because my perception was that I wasn't enough for my father. And so I kept getting partners that the goal was to make sure that they consistently liked me, but that meant that I had to change myself and I had to turn my awareness outwards. Think about how often you turn your awareness outwards. You have 75 trillion things. And Dawn Marie, I'd love to hear about what some of those little things are. I'm sure everyone else would too. It helps. It really helps. So imagine that when we feel stressed or when we feel anxious or when we feel the world around us is a little bit volatile or unpredictable, what happens is we turn our attention outward as a little kid to see what's going on, assess the situation, assess all the people that are involved, and then what we do is that is the beginning of giving our power away to what's happened in the past, where someone who's bigger than you says to you, "You need to make me happy. It's not okay that I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy, and in some way it's your fault. Now I need you to change in order that my life can stay fluid." Now, by the way, if you're guilting right now because you think you're a parent who actually did that, drop it. Probably your kids are gonna grow up and they'll figure it out. Don't worry, okay? We're talking about you right now. You right now having an optimal life, not you as a parent. We're talking about you in the past where you started to get trained, as everyone did, to start to look outside of ourselves to see what the heck we need to do to make sure not that we're happy and fulfilled. I love that, Dawn Marie. Not that we're happy and fulfilled, but that we don't make anyone else unhappy. So now, every relationship I'm in, I'm checking out how they are to see how I don't ruffle their feathers. And I am in this mode of, instead of going within, instead of listening to my own greater wisdom, instead of figuring out what makes me happy, I'm now trying to figure out what doesn't make someone else unhappy. So not only is it not about their happiness, it's about making sure that they're not unhappy, right? So in every relationship I'm in, I'm like, I got to perfect this. And then the thing is, I was a huge perfectionist. And so I was never in my presence, especially in a relationship. I was constantly vigilant to see if the people around me, especially in romantic relationships, making sure that they were not unhappy. And I would change myself to make sure that they were not unhappy. Sometimes it was even changing myself to make sure that I was not unliked. I think that happened later in life where I changed to make sure that at least I wasn't unliked. It wasn't about, having an outrageously amazing time. I was just trying to manage the heck out of my life. So, as many of you have said, the easiest place to find your presence is in nature. Why? Because in nature, all nature does is breathe out what you breathe in, or breathe out what you breathe in, and then it breathes in what you breathe out. So when you're in the trees and the flowers, it is the greatest act of reciprocal mutual honoring and such an amazing metaphor for how the universe is. Breath, when done in nature, when you're truly present to it, you will realize that your life relies on that exchange, and in that presence, usually a tremendous sense of gratitude will drop in, and there is nothing else. I mean, what else is there? You're taking in life force that would not be there but for the nature that surrounds you. You wouldn't be here. Now imagine that when it comes to breath exchange with the surrounding nature, that's that's a pretty good way to get humbled pretty fast. Back to the right now. I wouldn't even exist for this. Instead of taking a past that has pained you and worrying about that past happening again in the future. And when we live based on preventing pain instead of creating forward, we will perpetually either be in the anxiousness about the future or prevention of the past. Neither is presence. And so what I started to do is I started to hike. And one of those relationships, my boyfriend at the time happened to be pretty athletic, and he hiked to the top of Machu Picchu, not the ruins of Machu Picchu, but actually to the top of the mountain behind it. And so takes about 2 hours. And he expected that I wouldn't be able to make it to the top. And on that day, I just knew I was going to make it to the top. And instead of doing it because worried about him, about halfway up, I realized this is the most amazing thing I've ever done. And all of a sudden, I was in my full presence, and there were these 3 butterflies following me the entire way up. You know, you're on the side of a mountain, there's no railing on these steps. And I'm going up these steps, and I'm just astounded at the clarity of the air and the just the vision of what's down below. And I was just in such a state of awe that I thought to myself, why would I ever live any other way? But there was a little issue, because when you go and do something so extraordinary, it's easy to be shaken out of your wah, 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 meh, meh, meh. You know, I twitchy, I don't want to be here anymore kind of state of being, or worried about what everyone else is thinking of you, or worried how people are going to react to you, or judging yourself, or I could go on, of course. But it's so beautiful that it was easy to actually be right there, right then, because I didn't want to miss a thing. By the time I got to the top of the mountain, he turned around and he was shocked, and I didn't care. Because I had such a good time. It was amazing. In fact, I'll post on social media a picture of me at the top of that mountain and what I did, as a matter of fact. But then I thought, what do I need to do? Keep going to all these spectacular places in order to get fully in my presence? I mean, I had so many ideas too. I was writing them down. I had note paper. I was like, I had so many ideas because I was right in the moment, in the space between the atoms. All these ideas for so many things, for my house, for my business, for everything. And I thought, I want this all the time. Do I have to climb Machu Picchu every day? And then I realized, much like what Dawn Marie said, by the way, that's why I wanted you to share, Dawn Marie, because it's exactly in alignment with the story I'm telling. I thought, wait a second. Wait a second. There is You know, have I been so asleep that I literally need to climb Machu Picchu to realize that life in my presence is more magical? Maybe. I'm pretty stubborn. But when I went home, what happened was I took on my camera and I started taking pictures of the small things, of the little things. I started taking pictures of, like today, I took a picture and also smelled my irises that are bright yellow. They're gorgeous. And I didn't even realize they had a smell. It's the little things, but it's not little things. Those flowers are spectacular. Second thing is, it's like my fig tree because it's getting to be late in the fall. All the leaves are falling, but I found a ripe fig and I ate it right there and then. Is it a little thing or is it a big thing? And then, I went outside. My husband gave me a rose bush, pink roses, that if I stare out our front window from the kitchen, I see it every day, and it's spectacularly healthy, and it has roses all over it right now. And every single day, I go out and I smell the roses. And you might think, "Oh, but Jennifer, your life is," No, I got stuff just like you do. But what is the point of being alive and choosing to be here? What's the point? Are we gonna spend the rest of our lives hedging our bets? We talked about hedging your bets earlier. Hedging your bets is basically worrying about judgments and what people are gonna think and all that kind of stuff. So I also had meningitis. And when I got meningitis, my memory got pretty bad. I mean, really bad. All I could do is be in the present moment, which was kind of fascinating. And even now, my memory is not that great. I have to do workarounds. And I also have to apologize because sometimes I say things to people and then I forget that I said them. And people take it personally and whatever they do, and I don't blame them. But that's one of the aspects of me that's not so hot. And and trust me, oxygen therapy, all the herbs, I got this. I'm not asking for help. I literally am saying that it's been a thing. And what I wanna share with you is it gave me the gift of being in the present moment because I literally couldn't remember the past. So I wanna talk about the clues that you're not living in your presence, then what the benefits are of living in your presence, and then what you can do to live in your presence. Won't take long. So the clues that you're not, one is if you worry at all, you are instantly not in your presence because worry connotes that you are already thinking about a future that hasn't even happened now yet, and you're bringing it into the now. That's what worry is. Anxiety and worry are projecting futures that haven't happened yet when there are millions of futures that could, and acting now like it's not. That's not presence, right? Second thing is, if you tend to have neck and shoulder tension, usually you're worried about a future or a person. So next is you find yourself you find yourself fixing a lot of recurring health issues. It could be in, like headaches. I don't know if this is recurring though, Teresa. Um, find yourself with a recurring issue, and the recurring issue is usually the result of not being in your presence enough to either receive the right modality to go to or the right person or make the right change or, you know, change the food or whatever it is. Because in your presence, you get those answers very quickly. Fourth is you get frustrated. You get frustrated that you're not getting clarity. So usually that's because you're attached to an outcome in the future that hasn't happened. And it may be that what your life has in store for you, higher levels, greater consciousness, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, has in store for you is actually better than what you've imagined, but you're so attached to an outcome that you don't leave any space for it. And it's because you're worried about the future, and that's why you're attached to that outcome. Last symptom before we get to the benefits. Last symptom, and there are many other symptoms, by the way, but last symptom is you get a lack of clarity. You find that the ideas you need don't come to you. You find that you're sort of consistently stamping your feet, right? It's like, oh, I want to, so there's always this loop of why can't I get clarity? Why can't I get clarity? What am I doing wrong? That kind of thing. Okay. So living in your presence, what are the benefits? The benefits of living in your presence are: one, you always get clarity. Two, you need less sleep because when you're living in your presence, you're not resisting what is. When you resist what is, it costs you energy. It also generally means that you're judging yourself or judging others, and that causes resistance to life, and that resistance to life needs to be recovered from. Sleep is where you recover. Living in your presence equals 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. For instance, I had 6 hours of sleep last night. Not to say that I always do. Trust me when I say, with all the changes in the world right now, I've had plenty of times where I've had to have 8 hours of sleep. So, all right. Next is the next benefit of it is that less sleep, more energy. Also, the other thing, yeah. So the thing about living in your presence is that very you start getting used to it so much that very little pulls you out because it's not worth it. You start realizing how not worth it is to do anything but be in your presence. And the last benefit is this. In your presence, if you haven't been living that way, and I'll describe what it is in a second, generally, you're more fulfilled and your life has more meaning. And you usually get on track when you remember to consistently do the things that help you to get there again. Usually it takes less than 3 months. Sometimes it only takes a week. Sometimes you'll snap into it by having a dream one night and off you go. In my life, I am and I would say, you know, I'm just thinking of a client right now who's doing such great work to get into her presence, who is um who is just so sick of micromanaging her life and trying to be in control, which I know you don't know anything about that. Me neither. Right? And so those are the benefits. Finally, I just want to talk about what it takes to be there in a permanent way. We've been talking a lot with our guests, and the 2 guests coming up are brilliant at tools that help you get back in your presence momentarily. Like, so within 5 minutes or within 10 minutes, you can just like breathe and get back in yourself, right? So, one of the things that I want to say is that the question that I had way back then, when I was taking cameras of the minutia and everything, I realized that you could have this great big view, but sometimes when you take a really close view of an iris or a rose, or you smell the roses every day, those things getting a new view, whether it's a big view of the world or a smaller view of the world, um, as long as you make yourself do it consistently every day, you just have some discipline, it just reminds. Whenever I look at a tree, my instant response is thank you. I go and swing under an oak tree that's on a trail that I go to, at least 3 times a week, and I'm in such deep presence to the how much oxygen this thing has breathed out in its 350 years probably, and all of the oak trees around it that are alive that it proliferated as well. However, after learning from so many physicists and epigeneticists and so many different people from around the world, and then the gift of having deep conversations with our clients about embodying, and being so frustrated of continually having to excavate their past in order to be fully present. About 10 years ago, I realized that you do not have to excavate your past to become fully present. In fact, to live in your presence, what it does eventually is it will help you reframe your entire past and bring it to a new perspective such that you actually don't have to excavate the past first. You come to a higher frequency on your own. But hold on, just listen up for a second. Most people are running around trying to manage their lack of presence. Most people do not even consider, which is what I did way back when, me and a few compatriots, considered, hey, how can you actually change the permanent way you relate to life such that you don't actually have to manage the knee jerk responses and triggers? You literally can come to another understanding of life that makes you more permanently in your presence so you can reap those benefits we were talking about earlier. How is it like, what is it that causes us to be able to flourish, but change our relationship to love, change our relationship to finances, not in a way that's like an aha, but literally the entire modus operandi, the way you operate in life by understanding physics. So I'm going to give you 3 tools and then we'll be done for this evening. 3 ideas that changed my life such that it had me start to be able to just be in the embodiment of my presence, i.e., not have to manage my triggers, my upsets, my annoyances, my anxiety with tools, but actually just be different. So I didn't have to go through all that effort all the time. Sometimes, no problem. When you get unexpected things, it happens. So the first thing is, and we talked about this earlier in our process, I asked myself the question, what would it look like? And everybody just breathe for a second. Just breathe. I asked myself the question, what would it look like if I were to fully choose to be alive on the planet right now, no matter the circumstances? What would it look like to just without needing to justify it or rationalize it, what would it look like simply to choose to fully be here, right? So that was the first question. Not that I need an answer from you, but I wonder what it would look like for you to choose. What would disappear? What would happen? By the way, the election night was an amazing catalyst for me to deepen my relationship to fully choosing to be here. Because in all honesty, it'd be so easy not to, right? Depending on which side of the aisle you were on. And even then, it doesn't even matter. And it depends on how much of a great relationship you have with change. If you love to make sure that things are predictable and in control, this is going to make you pretty uncomfortable. So, what would it take? What would it look like for me to actually fully choose to be here? So, I'd love to see your comments. What would it look like? What would disappear? What would have to be different? The second question I asked is this: what are the laws of physics that allow me to transcend needing to three-dimensionally wrestle my life to the ground? If I were to become an Olympic athlete of the smallest particles of me and of life, would that make a difference? And the answer was yes, because once I understood physics, the 3D control mechanisms started to just be insignificant. I didn't care anymore. It's like, oh, that's how it works. Well, heck, I'm going to do that. Right? It's what we talked about in the first 4 days, I think. How do you get to a different frequency so you become receptive to all of the answers rather than the perspective that is out there for decades now that you have to fix what's in the way first? And the thing is, you just don't. You can actually transmute hundreds of stuck beliefs at a time simply by going to a new frequency where all the answers live, right? So that's the second thing that helped me. The third thing is very pragmatic. It's very practical. I'm going to give this to you today. You can integrate it or not. Maybe you used to integrate it and then you forgot. Every night before I go to bed, I say, life, higher levels, God, whatever you believe, physics, take command. You know what I've been asking for. Literally, you're omnipresent. So take command. I'm going to disappear from this reality for the next 6, 7, 8 hours, 9, 10, whatever it is for you. And when I wake up, I'd love to be shown. Then before I go to bed, I say, I declare this day complete. And anything that I need to write down on a piece of paper will be there for me in the morning. I always write down stuff on a piece of paper to make sure I have nothing on my mind before I go to bed. There is one bonus thing though. So I declare this day complete. Higher consciousness, take command, because I'm out. Peace out. So then there is a bonus thing though. I had a moment where I built there's a technology that we use in our work called Brainbridge. And a Brainbridge is like a statement that is so clear that it's a higher truth that you can no longer hold on to the things that bind you. And instantaneously, your left and right brains make a new agreement And that new agreement transcends the old one and it sets you free. So at least a couple of times a week, I remind myself. I've had sticky notes all over my house too, so that's a piece of homework you can do. I had sticky notes all over my house at one point that said, I wasn't meant to belong to society. I was meant to belong to the universe, which means that I belong to myself. And there was such freedom in that. I'm going to say it again. Belonging to three-dimensional humanity is an exercise in futility because you can't make everybody else happy, nor do you 100% agree with anyone. And I realized, well, if it doesn't work, then it can't be the deepest truth. So what is the deepest truth? The deepest truth must be that I'm a divine child of an infinite universe, and that's where I've always belonged. And I get to have life on planet Earth, but the mission here is not to belong. The mission here is to be as above, so below, to be fully who I am as a child of the infinite. And if that's the aim, gosh, I literally don't have to. Now you can see where the story comes in from the beginning. I don't have to make sure anybody else is unhappy or happy. I literally can be myself, and I will become a living magnet to those who not make me happy or make me unhappy. I'll become a living magnet to the people I want to co-create with and play with. And life becomes about co-creation and play as opposed to trying to belong. There is so much freedom in that. So I'd love to hear from you. What did you hear tonight that was, and just breathe for a moment. It's juicy, right? It's so good. So, and you can listen to these again and take notes or whatever, but please take a deep breath. And I'd love to hear what you heard about tonight that was helpful to you. What was yummy? What was perfect? What did you need to hear? What was helpful? What stuck with you? What struck your heart? What inspired your body? What did you hear that was like, "Oh, okay." What helped? So write it into the comment field, you guys. Tomorrow we have Whitney Natiello, who is going to be talking about her brains technique, which is really super cool. It's about, so start thinking about anything recent that has caused you a little bit of trauma. So it has to be in the last 4 weeks. And thank you, Susan. I love that one about belonging as well. That was so good for me. Yeah. I remember way back when I was standing in San Diego and the NBC building was there. And I thought, NBC, you mean the Not Belonging Club? so, so, yeah. What did you hear that really helped? And I want you to know that those questions that I asked earlier, those are questions, those permanent cellular shifts, that's what happens in the embodiment workshop. This is, this is not to sell you on anything, but literally I'm on the planet. The answer to the question, what's the greatest thing I can do using the skills I already have to wake up inspired and go to bed knowing that I'm doing what I came to the planet? My answer to that is the embodiment workshop. That is what we facilitate in order to help people embody the shifts, especially right now, to, in the first day, clear the decks of all the density that's happened. In the second day, to dance in the void where you're not being pulled by a future or anxious about a future or living in the past and trying to excavate. But literally, what's the dream that wants to dream you? And then on the third day, we just let it rip and create a plan. So I'm so glad you're getting validation that you're in the present. I'm so glad that you know that you belong to the universe. Like belong, you never imagine all the times you've said, I feel like I don't belong. You never were supposed to in the first place. Isn't that a relief? so, so you guys, love you. And we'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you go and check out day 5 and day 1 for sure. I really love the conversation around carrying. I've had a few people say that they have. I love that you feel the quiet joy that comes from being me. Whoever you are on Facebook, that's so awesome. I don't see your name, but I appreciate you sharing so much. And everyone, thanks for being part of, the Heaven on Earth construction crew, which is really a co-creative, band of people who are more interested in co-creating from the present moment what's possible rather than complaining about what has been or what is. So, Diane, of course it's you. Okay, you guys. So I love you. Have the best rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are, whenever you're listening. We'll see you tomorrow for a super cool, groovy, um, probably tool that you have never heard of before. And I want to make sure that you know about it because it's so good. Kind of like, kind of like super juicy, super short to do it, and like, oh my god, this is so great, called the brains technique. You'll see it tomorrow. Okay, you guys, love you. Have a good one. Thank you, Adam Lamb, for being in the back, having my back.